There's been a lot of talk lately about Deion Sanders, the head coach of Colorado football, potentially making a move to the NFL. The latest buzz comes from a report by Vinny Bossor, which suggests that Sanders is seriously eyeing the head coaching job with the Las Vegas Raiders. According to the report, NFL associates of Sanders reached out to the Raiders, showing his interest in the position. However, it's important to note that it's still unclear whether the Raiders are interested in bringing Sanders on board. The idea of Sanders joining the Raiders has been floating around for months, but many thought it was unlikely due to Sanders being under contract with Colorado and thriving in his role there. After all, he has built a strong program in Boulder, Colorado, and many believed he was settled in college football for the long haul. That said, the connection between the Raiders and Sanders' son, Shedeur Sanders, has kept the speculation alive. If Deion Sanders ever did make the jump to the NFL, it seems like the Raiders could be a top destination. What's also significant is that Deion Sanders hasn't completely ruled out the idea of coaching in the NFL. During an appearance on Good Morning America, he mentioned he would consider the opportunity, but only if it meant coaching both of his sons. With the Raiders parting ways with former head coach Antonio Pierce, this could open the door for primetime to make a big move. After a disappointing season and the decision to part ways with their general manager, the Las Vegas Raiders find themselves facing a lot of uncertainty. This opens up a wide range of possibilities for the future, especially when it comes to leadership and coaching. One name that's come up frequently in speculation is Deion Sanders. He had an impressive season with the Colorado Buffaloes, leading them to a 9-3 record, a huge improvement from last year's performance. There's growing belief among NFL insiders that Tom Brady, who recently became a minority owner of the Raiders, might play a role in helping Sanders land the job. Brady and Sanders have a strong relationship, and with the Raiders potentially in position to draft Sanders' son, Shedeur Sanders, who is considered a promising quarterback prospect, this connection could make a lot of sense. However, it's important to keep in mind that Sanders is still under contract with the University of Colorado. He signed a lucrative deal in December 2022 worth $29.5 million, which averages out to about $5.9 million per year. One crucial part of his contract is the buyout clause, which means if Sanders were to leave Colorado before his contract ends, he would owe the university a significant amount of money. $10 million if he leaves in 2024, $8 million in 2025, and $5 million after that. Despite this, the financial obstacle may not be a major issue for the Raiders, especially since owner Mark Davis is known for being willing to write big checks. That could be a factor in making a potential move for Sanders more feasible. Heading into next season, Raiders owner Mark Davis is facing a challenging financial situation. He'll be paying 4 different head coaches. Davis still owes John Gruden money from his contract, which he signed for 6 years and $60 million, but only got 1.5 seasons out of. He also has to settle what's owed to Antonio Pierce after parting ways with him, and of course, whoever the next head coach is will also need to be compensated. This financial burden is certainly significant, but when it comes to Deion Sanders' buyout from Colorado, which is around $8 million, it's a smaller price to pay in the grand scheme of things. If the Raiders are seriously interested in bringing Sanders aboard, this cost doesn't seem like it would be a major barrier. As for whether or not this move will actually happen, it's hard to say. Until now, it was mostly speculation. An interesting topic for conversation, but with insider Vinny B reporting this as more than just a rumor, it carries more weight. It makes sense that Deion Sanders, if he were to leave Colorado, would strongly consider the NFL, especially with the chance to coach his sons. If the Raiders were to pick up Shedeur Sanders in the draft, it would only add to the allure of coaching in Las Vegas for Deion. However, it's important to note that nothing is set in stone. While the Raiders hold the number 6 overall pick in the draft, there's no guarantee they'll choose Shedeur Sanders. The possibility also exists that Deion and Shedeur could make it clear to teams that they won't show up to training camp if they're drafted by certain franchises. Additionally, Shedeur Sanders' draft stock may have taken a slight hit after a tough performance in the Alamodome Bowl. That said, while this may not be the Raiders' top target, it's certainly a possibility worth considering. With Tom Brady now involved in the Raiders' operations, it's clear that he's focusing heavily on one top candidate, Ben Johnson. The Raiders recently conducted an interview with Johnson, and reports indicate that they were extremely impressed with him. According to Ian Rappaport, Johnson has quickly emerged as one of the front-runners for the head coaching job in Las Vegas. If the Raiders decide he's their top choice, they're reportedly prepared to wait as long as necessary to secure him. This waiting game could stretch on for a while, given that Johnson is currently involved in the playoffs. The extended timeline does raise some concerns. As other teams continue to hire coaches, the pool of available candidates will shrink. If the Raiders put all their focus on Johnson and he decides to take another job, they could find themselves scrambling for alternatives. That's where Deion Sanders could come in as a solid backup option. If, a few weeks down the line, Ben Johnson ends up somewhere else, the Raiders could potentially turn to Sanders as a last-minute solution. Tom Brady's influence is likely to keep Ben Johnson at the top of the list, but it's always smart to have a backup plan in place. Should the Raiders need to pivot quickly, Sanders might just be the safety net they need. If Tom Brady wasn't involved and Mark Davis were solely making the decisions, I think it's safe to say Deion Sanders would be a strong candidate for the Raiders' head coaching job. The entertainment value alone would make him an appealing choice for Davis, who's known for making bold, high-profile moves. The excitement and buzz that Sanders could bring would undoubtedly draw attention, and the financial opportunities would be hard to ignore. This kind of move certainly aligns with Mark Davis's style. As for how I feel about Sanders as a coach, if the Raiders were to bring him in, I wouldn't be upset, though I'm not sure I'd be overjoyed either. It would be a high-risk, high-reward situation, but I'd be willing to take that risk. A big part of the NFL is the entertainment factor, and Sanders has that in spades. If he were to join the Raiders and bring his son, Shedeur, along, it could significantly boost the team's profile. It's also not hard to imagine the Raiders getting more attention from referees, with the Sanders duo leading the charge, but that's all speculative for now. At the moment, though, it seems like Ben Johnson is still the Raiders' top choice. They've made it clear they're all in on him, and now it's up to Johnson to make his decision. The good news for the Raiders is that other teams like the New England Patriots seem to be leaning toward Mike Vrabel, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have already filled their general manager position. This leaves the door open for Ben Johnson to potentially have a say in who the Raiders bring in as their next GM, which could make the job even more appealing. The outcome of the Raiders' pursuit of Ben Johnson will likely depend on how well Tom Brady and the organization can convince him to take the job. Meanwhile, there's another development to consider. The Raiders are set to meet with former Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll. This interview, which will be in person, is scheduled for Monday. Carroll, with his Super Bowl win and long tenure with the Seahawks, certainly brings a wealth of experience to the table. He's known as a player's coach and has had a lot of success in the NFL. However, there's one concern with Carroll: his age. At 73, he's on the older side for an NFL head coach, and I personally worry about the potential downside of hiring a coach who's past his prime. If this were a few years ago, Carroll might have been a more appealing choice, but at this stage in his career, there's a risk that he could be more focused on collecting his final NFL paycheck rather than leading a team into the future. I think the Raiders can find better options that would be more focused on long-term success. That said, if the Raiders could bring Carroll into the organization in a different role, perhaps as a consultant or in a front office position, he could still bring value. But as the day-to-day head coach, I think the team should look for a more future-focused option. We'll see how the interview goes, though, and whether or not it leads to anything substantial. Now, I'd love to hear what Raider Nation thinks about the report that Deion Sanders might be interested in coaching the Raiders. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're new here and enjoy Raider-related content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all in the next video.